Kapitel Beis, Pasuk Tesvav. Since Vashti has gone off site. It's 4 years later. It's 4 years down the line. 4 years after Vashti is gone. It's Esther's turn. It's Esther's turn. Eddie, come on. I'm Brute is better, as you know. To compensate them, they could ask for any presents they wanted. Eddie, they could ask for any presents they wanted to compensate them for technically being kidnapped. And that was b'diavad, so they were okay with it. But when it came Esther's turn, she remained, even though she'd been there 12 months, and normally after 12 months you get used to things, you change, you acclimatise. Esther didn't change. The anusa she was when she was chapped, batilakach, she kept it. And therefore she didn't ask for anything to show I'm not masking. I don't agree. I don't want this to happen. When he reached the third, when he reached Esther's turn, the daughter of Avichail Doi Mordechai. Why now all of a sudden does it mention her father's name? Found out today, Esther's father was actually Mordechai's Rebbe.
His brother?
It was his uncle. He was a nephew. They were cousins. Esther and Mordechai were cousins. His uncle was his Rebbe. Oh yeah, that's what the Rekech says. Okay, now just remembered. I want to tell Chaim this. Came across something very interesting today. So when Mordechai comes on the scene, he says Ish Yehudi. He calls it Ish Yehudi. So the big debate, what does it mean Ish Yehudi? What does it mean?
Jewish man.
Yeah. So we know he's Jewish, yeah? So what's Ish Yehudi? It says one other time in Tanakh the word Ish Yehudi. And in the context, it says the Rekech. In the context of the apostle over there, it means the same thing here. Now, we know around Rosh Hashanah time we had a big drive about wearing tzitzis, yeah? Remember? Yeah, we had a big push. A lot of people were mischazik and in the midst of the tzitzis. So the Chazal say, it's the pasuk in Sefania, that la'asid love, if somebody is particular to wear tzitzis nowadays, he's makpid to keep this mitzvah, he'll be zoicha to have 2,800 avodim when Mashiach comes. He said on each corner of his tzitzis, he'll have 700 avodim, kodesh avodim, for the 70 nations, and there'll be 10 from each nation, will hang on to each corner of his tzitzis. It says, Le'achos bekamfos ish Yehudi. Says the Rekech, just like that, it's a reference to tzitzis. Ish Yehudi here means Mordechai was particular with the mitzvah of tzitzis. That's why he calls him Ish Yehudi. Has the same meaning as the pasuk over there. So, right, later on it says, Tcheles, Mordechai Yosef Vnei Melech, Belevush Malchus, but Tcheles says he was wearing the tzitzis out, talus or tzitzis, but it was makpid, even then, when he's wearing the royal garments, still wore his talus and tefillin. Didn't give it up. Okay. I thought you like that one. I came across that this afternoon. Now, another interesting thing was, very interesting, when they said, it's just before we carry on now, it says, V'yigbetsu es kol nara. The young guys advised Achashverosh to find a new wife. Gather all the naros, and you'll find someone new. It says the word V'yigbetsu. The word V'yigbetsu, David, occurs one time else in Tanakh. Where does it occur? So they've gone around the whole empire, 127 provinces, and they've had a few girls from here, a few girls from there, and they brought them all. Where else does it say V'yigbetsu, Chaim? No? Where? Oh, Valkyra, from the old Adas. Yeah? So with the Yosef, V'yigbetsu es kol oichel ha'er saviv. He said every girl they were instructed not only to bring the girl, bring food from where she comes from, because she won't be used to the food in Shushan, and she'll get a stomach ache, she'll have stomach problems. So therefore, there's a V'yigbetsu that they brought the girl plus food from whatever country she was taken from. The Rekech. Yeah. Okay, so get back to here. Now, to get back to Esther, when it was her turn, Doig Mordechai, the uncle of Mordechai, Shelokach Lelebas, Mordechai taken her as a daughter, Lavay El HaMelech, Loi Big Shah Dova, William, she didn't ask for anything. She didn't want any compensation. Kim es asher yoima Haggai Sris HaMelech Shem Anoshim. Whatever Haggai told her to say or told her to do, she listened to Haggai. And even though she did nothing, the pasuk says, "Vatihi Esther noises chen be'eni kore'eha." She wasn't following any of the rules. She wasn't keeping anything of the protocol they were supposed to keep. And still, everybody liked Esther. Now, how did Mordechai know this? How did Mordechai know everybody liked Esther? So the Gemara says, this is one of the psukim we see, it was written Baruch HaKodesh. How do you know what everyone's thinking about you? Ellie, what am I thinking about you now? No idea. You hope something nice, yeah? Yeah, and vice versa. But I don't know. Yeah, you can hope. Rather, the Gemara says, the way a human being works is the way you think about somebody else, you think that's what he's thinking about you as well. So if you don't like somebody, you actually think he doesn't like you. And it might not be true, you might be very pleasantly surprised. It's not true at all. But the Gemara says that's how it works. It's a Rashi and Chumash. Yeah? You think it's that's how people work. That's how people work. Sorry? Command upon him, yeah. Similar idea. Yeah. So now, but then the Gemara says an amazing thing. There was another nation in the beginning. The Gemara says there's no proof. From here it was Baruch HaKodesh. Because everybody thought Esther was from their country. And they heard people saying, oh, she's one of ours. She looks like one of ours. So Mordechai heard this, they heard it. So that's how they knew everyone liked her. Everyone liked her. So the Gemara says it's not Muchach that it was Baruch HaKodesh. Although the Fida Maskon, the Gemara says it was. It was. But this pasuk on its own, if you isolate it, you could explain it in another way. Okay. So now, what time does Esther get her summons? So Chazal say this is all part of the Hashgacha Pratis. Ariel, no. It's all part of the Hashgacha Pratis. Vatilokach again. Vatilokach. She's chapped again. She's taken forcibly. El HaMelech HaChashverosh El Beis Malchusei B'Chodesh HaAsiri Hu Chodesh Teves. What time of the year is Teves? Midsummer or midwinter, Ariel? When's Teves? Teves is December. So it's the longest nights of winter.
Teves is January.
So it could be January. Yeah, it hovers around December, January, yeah? Yeah? So what's Pshat? Says Rashi, because Baruch Hu Dafka arranged it, that Esther's turn would come in midwinter. Says Chazal, when it's very cold outside, the time when it's very cold, and the time when it's long night, so he was sitting there schmoozing to Esther for hours and hours and hours. He spent a long time, because Baruch Hu gave Esther an opportunity to have a long time with the king. In midsummer, the nights are short. He would have less time. He had more time, and it was all part of the plan, so he should spend a longer time with Esther. And immediately he liked her. Now what happened? Unbelievable thing. Year 7 of his reign. So he got rid of Vashti year 3. And now it's year 7, so it's taken 4 years later. And Chazal said this was an amazing thing. He didn't just rush to replace Vashti. He took his time to do it properly. Chazal say that was seichel. That was a seichel thing to do. So, what happened? Vayehav HaMelech es Esther mikol hanoshim. He liked Esther more than all the others. Vatisochem v'chesed lefonah mikol hapsulos. She found favour in his eyes more than all the others. He stopped the competition. The next morning he said to his chaver, right, I'm having Esther. And what did he do? He was told, don't replace Vashti, just make a queen, but don't give her Timlech Tachas Vashti, just take the place of Vashti, sit on the queen's throne, or whatever it was, whatever the thing was. You know what he did? He goes and takes the crown and plonks it on her head like Vashti. He mamash gave her the same thing as Vashti. It says, Vayosem Kesem Malchus Barosha, he put the crown on her head, Vayamlicheha Tachas Vashti. He absolutely replaced her 100%. Whatever Vashti could do, she could do. Wherever Vashti had authority, he gave Esther authority. But that's not what his advisors had told him. So again, things are not working the way they should have worked. He wasn't following the advice he was told to. Now, there could have been hundreds or thousands more women there in the Beis Hanoshim waiting their turn. And they had told him, check them all out. No, stop the unbelievable. He's not followed protocol. So again, you see irrational things happening. Things which don't make sense will happen when the Kosh Baruch Hu wants it to happen. Because Baruch says, right, you've got Esther now. Stop them playing the games now. He stops playing the game. It's quite incredible. And Mordechai's writing this in the Megillah. This is part of the nace. He didn't carry on after he met Esther. Now, problem was, on the form you had to fill out, to be in this contest, you had to put country of origin, ethnic background. you had to fill it out, and there was no option. If you don't want to write it, you don't have to write it. You had to fill it out. There was no messing about.
There's no other.
There was no right. So he didn't know what to do. It intrigued him. Where's Esther from? Now, why would it bother him so much? What does he care? So you could say it would be nice to know if she's from somewhere Choshev or Choshev family. That could be. It makes sense. But if it says earlier, everyone liked Esther. Everyone thought Esther was one of theirs. So he had a conflicting opinions. Every country's saying she's from our country. She's one of ours. She's one of our people. So he never had this before. Everybody thinks it's from their country. So he probably would have asked her straight, well, where are you from? Lamaisa, where are you from? Now, it would appear she didn't have a big nose, so he didn't think she was Jewish. Yeah. Well, obviously, it just never dawned on him. Even though she came from Shushan, and Mordechai seems to know her, and he's walking outside the palace the whole time, doesn't enter his head. She's Jewish. Maybe she's Jewish. It's a Pella. Again, another Pella in the Megillah story. So what does he do? He tries to flatter Esther. Tries to do things in her honour of the new queen, and maybe she'll come forward. So what does he do? Very interesting. So Vayasa Melech Mishte Godol L'chol Sarav Va'avodov. Now what does the word Godol here mean? So the Vilna Gaon says big can be in quantity or it can be in quality. Now we know the other party was 180 days and this wasn't. So the big here can't mean in quantity, it must have been in quality. It was a party, but it was a real chosh of a party. What they put out there for eating and drinking was like the top stuff. And who did he invite? Who were the Sorav Avodov, the 127
King. Nation.
presidents of all the nations? Only they got invited. Why? He's hoping one of them will tell him where she's one of ours. Maybe one of them will tell him she's from our country, or she might say he's from our country. I'm from his country. Then he does another shtick. He scraps income tax everywhere, or reduces income tax in honor of Esther. Everywhere, again across across all the countries, hoping again one country would send a telegram to Esther. Dear Queen Esther, thank you so much for bringing about this reduction in taxes. Somebody would give the game away in one of the countries. She's one of us. Well, it's very interesting. Maybe he did, but she said I was orphaned as a child, so she could hide behind that. It was true. She said, I have no idea where I'm from. Right. So then he tries another stick. So then he sends presents out. Every country gets presents. Again, in honor of the new Queen Esther, everybody got these presents. Now, do you know Saudi Arabia, when they get a new king, do you know what they do? They want them to be happy with the new king. You don't have much say in who's taking over there. So they give out, no joke, something between $50 and $100 billion in presents to the whole country. Everybody gets a couple of $1,000s, right? They've got a sovereign wealth fund of what they've amassed from oil with $900 billion in it. So they give out a little bit to make everyone happy with the new king, and he treats them all to things, so everybody starts buying new cars, or that's what they do to buy the affection of the people. It works quite well. Can you imagine, in America they had the seichel to do it, give everybody $3,000 or $4,000 in COVID. Yeah, tried to do it in Israel, but it didn't pass.
Release everyone from prison, Donald Trump.
Sorry.
Release everyone from prison.
Israel they do. They take back taxes.
Well, that's what they tried to do, but it didn't go through. I was all happy with all my kids, you know what I mean, get a windfall. Didn't happen. The politics shut it down. Right, because Rob didn't want it. Okay. And then he tries another thing. He sort of gives Esther a hint. Maybe it's not a permanent position. He got all the girls to come together again. Uvikaves besulo shenis. He brings them all back and says, maybe we'll just have a second reconsider. Maybe we'll take, maybe we'll choose somebody else. He's already given her the crown, already given her the job, and he's trying to get Esther. You know what I mean? Just tell me where you're from. No. But Mordechai Yosef b'Shah Melech. Mordechai sitting outside, and every time he sees Esther, he goes, "Keep still. Don't say a word." So she understood what Mordechai was telling her. So it says, "Ein Esther magedes moilatzov es amo kashet tziva oleh Mordechai." Now, Mordechai told her to be quiet because he was terrified, because they'd not kept the law. They didn't volunteer Esther, and eventually she got found out. He was scared she might get into trouble or they might punish the family. It didn't happen. The opposite. They gave Esther a lot of. She got priority boarding. Yeah, she got VIP treatment there. So the real reason Mordechai's worry didn't apply, but quite amazingly, Esther just listened to what Mordechai said. Like when she was in his house, she listened to him. She carried on listening to him. I saw tonight that Al Shech HaKodesh says this is part of the Nes Purim, part of the Tikkun Esther and Mordechai had to do to rectify the chet of their Zayda Shol HaMelech. What did Shol HaMelech do wrong? What did he do wrong? Shmuel told him, go and fulfill the mitzvah of wiping out Amalek. And he was told, lock, stock and barrel. So Hershey, what's lock, stock and barrel?
No.
Everybody, every person, every animal, flatten every building, just obliterate Amalek. Now, is that ambiguous? Is that an ambiguous request? Go and carpet bomb Amalek. Effectively. Go on, just flatten the place and don't leave any survivors. No one must survive. Is there any ambiguity in that? Ariel, what do you say?
Oi.
Yeah. Well, the good people.
There were none. There were none.
Don't get that.
Right? But that's what Shaul made a cheshbon. Instead of Shaul HaMelech just fulfilling what he was told to do and nothing else, he made cheshbonos. What about the good animals? We can use them as kavanas, pity, and the king, I kill him there and then. Let's take him captive, and then make a big public execution of Agag, and we'll publicize so everybody will see we did the mitzvah. He made cheshbonos. He didn't do what he was told to do because he was told to do it. He started to make cheshbonos. So the tikkun was of Mordechai and Esther, they had to do what they had to do with no cheshbonos. So although Esther here could have come up with a lomdus and said the whole reason why Mordechai said don't tell them is because he's scared they might take it out on us. But the mice said they're showing me tremendous respect and I'm already the queen. So what's he worried about? Mordechai said don't tell. I don't tell. She didn't make cheshbonos. Right? This is basically where Adam Rishon went wrong. It's a human failing, of not following instructions. Right? Kosh Baruch Hu says don't eat from the tree. Don't eat from the tree. Chava came with the lomdus and what's his name, and the Nachash had the proof. It's not a problem. That's making cheshbonos again. Yeah, the command is a command, and that's it. But so we'll see again. You'll see 3 or 4 more times they do this. That's exactly what Esther and Mordechai do. We'll see as we get there, Be'ez Hashem. Okay. Right. So Esther's now. Stage 1 is Esther's in place in the palace. Esther's in place in the palace. There's now one more thing has to be sorted out, and then Haman can come on the scene. Now, this is actually 5 years from what it's not clear until the Gezerah of Haman came out was 5 years after this. So again, Mordechai writes these strange words by Yomim Haheim. In those days, nothing untoward. There was nothing silly. Nothing. No reason to assassinate the king. There was no reason for it. There's nothing doing. So the Malbim points out, everybody get them all the right words. Mordechai now points out 6 things. 6 things happen, again irrational, shouldn't have happened. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu's got to make something happen for the Geula of Klal Yisrael, so it's going to happen. Look at this. So Bayom HaMaheim, normal days, Mordechai Yoshev b'Shah HaMelech. Mordechai happens to be sitting by by the king's gates. So what's so unusual about that? Everybody else in Buckingham Palace, how do you see the guards? Are they sitting or standing?
Sharing.
If you sit by the king's gate, you stand. And Mordechai sitting there. What's going on? Someone brought him a deck chair or something, what's going on? So number one, it's unusual. Something strange is going on. He's got permission to sit where everybody else is standing. Number one. Number two, Kotsaf, big son of Seresh, Shnei Sarisi Amela, two of the king's nobles get angry with the king. Well, why? What's he done wrong? What's he done wrong? What are they angry about? They're there standing and Mordechai sitting. Says the Malbim.
Busy but nice.
Well, listen to this. It's amazing. Listen to this. So it says, Mishomrei Hasaf. So some say they were the bodyguards of the king by the door, the threshold to the king's chambers. Normally, they are the most loyal servants you can get. You put on the inner circle of the bodyguards. By the way, do you know how they're trained bodyguards of the royal family? Do you know how they're trained? They're trained in something which is actually against human nature, but they have to train them in it. What is it? If somebody shoots at a member of the royal family, they have to jump in and take the bullet. It's part of their training.
Also president.
Part of the training, yeah. It's part of the training. And that's against human instinct. But I don't know how they do it, but they're trained that they have to put their body in the way to get the bullet, to take the bullet rather than the president or the queen.
What happened to Reagan?
It was what he got.
You can see actually with the clip of it.
Right.
He jumped in for the bullet.
The security guard. Right. We used to have Rabin though.
They all scarfed.
The old scarper because they planned it. Yeah. Right.
Camera, be arrested.
What? Right. There's a big conspiracy theory about it. Because
Sad.
there was no one there as he came down the steps. There was no one at the bottom of the steps. It was a basic security breach.
100% inside job.
Yeah, it had to
It's
be.
not possible.
Had to be.
It's Shabbat.
The second he ran out of the crowd, he should have been shot on the spot. Yeah. They clearly was a conspiracy theory. Right? It's very interesting though. He died the way he behaved himself.
Yeah.
Begin's ship, he fired on Begin's ship.
Yeah.
Political reasons you kill the Yidden? Oh, okay.
Quick over. Your skull.
Yeah, the skull. Yeah. Unbelievable story. Anyway, I actually met. Last time I was in Eretz Yisrael for my grandson's bris about 2 years ago. I was sitting in Unsdorf in the shul there, and there was a mid-morning, and there was a shir, all old men in the shir, almost all over 80. And one of the guys there said he came from Poland, and he said, I watched that bombing. He said, we lived by the beach, near the beach, and he saw it taking place. He saw the ship being bombed. Little boy, he was watching it. He saw it. So anyway, I'll come on him. So, what's Mishomri Hasaf? I came across today something amazing.
Weren't they from the kitchen staff?
Well, they were the inner circle of bodyguards. They were guarding the king's room.
They were probably not spiking kids' food, no?
That's what they did. Now that's how they were able to spike it, because no food could get in without them checking it first. So number one, they planned to poison. Now, but that poisoning is an old way of killing kings, isn't it? So there's another way. There's another way of doing it, a little bit more gruesome, and that is basically to stab him. That's also a traditional way of killing dictators.
Caesar, yeah.
Caesar, yeah. Right? So listen to this. What's the Hebrew name for a dagger or a knife? It's not a cherev, that's a sword. Sakin is a knife. Yeah, that's a spear. What's the name for a dagger? It's more Mishnaic Hebrew. You find it more Lashon Mishnaic than
Something like a beta.
a bayonet, something like that. Yeah. What is it? It's called a sayef. Sayef actually means a blade, I think. Right? So it says Mishomri Asayef. They hid it in their boots. They had the knives waiting for them. They were guarding the knives. If they couldn't poison him, they would stab him. Now, this was mad. This was insane because
Sayef spelled with a samach though.
Samach as well. Show me Asaf. Samach Pei. Yeah. So says the Malbim. when you assassinate an emperor, who assassinates emperors? The guy who wants to take over after them. After the guy, yeah? But these two schleppers, they're not going to be the next king. All that will happen to them is they'll be executed for assassinating the king. So what are they playing around with? What are they trying to achieve? Again, it's illogical. It doesn't make sense. Next thing. They know they're not going to get away with it. So it's like a suicide mission for no purpose. Chazal say, do you know what annoyed them? Amazing thing. Chazal bothered by this. What annoyed them so much? Because they were the guards of the royal rooms where the king was. Since Esther came along, Achashverosh was partying every night, and they had to go and get the drinks. They were all night, the night shift. They were busy all night instead of be quietly, marching up and down with with your jackboot up and down, then stop you, then turn around once every few minutes. They were being kept. They were busy all night, and they were fed up with it. They were getting fed up with having to bring more and more drink or more whatever. What do you call it? Spring water, whatever. They were fed up with this, and it all started when Esther came along.
They probably felt like Nabucco.
Now, so the big thing is though, if Achashverosh was a Soni Yisrael, even bigger than Haman, why did Mordechai not let them go ahead and do it? Why would he want to stop? Why would he want to stop them doing it?
It's a mitzvah.
What?
Because you have to respect the king.
So what it says, I was respect for the king. Could be.
Maybe you knew you'd get close to the king. Now.
Could be. I think the Rekech seems to say something along those lines.
The king.
Niet have respect for God's king.
Yeah, while we're in Golos, absolutely.
Dienen nog iets te dienen, but after.
In Golos, you have to. Moira Malchus, you have to. Mispala b'shleimish Malchus. So if you got an opportunity to see a king, you got to pay and go and see. You make a bracha, yeah. So it's a big debate.
שמישהו אחר יהרוג את המלך, זה הבית הסגוי.
If you leave them, then one guy gets killed. This way, you got rid of two. You got rid of two anti-Semites. Yeah, okay. But the Rekeh brings I think it's a medrash, and it seems to be he felt number one, you never know who you're going to get next. That's the thing. It's better that sometimes the devil you know than the one you don't know. But it said there that he had a feeling he could be poil on Achashverosh maybe to get Rishus to build the base of Mikdash again. And then he was worried about another thing. Mordechai has just been allowed to sit here. So you can imagine the newspaper reports, if the king gets assassinated, they would say, oh, once the Jew takes over on the security rota, the king got assassinated. It wouldn't go down very well if he wouldn't have revealed the plot. So I can't remember all of them. Tomorrow I'll be back. I had 3 or 4 other cheshbonos. But one of them was, that the minute he got there, all of a sudden the security rota went screwy. Yeah, security rota B and C turned up or something, whatever. But Vayevoda had over Mordechai. Now, how did he find out? So Chazal say it was the languages. Yeah, that they came from Tarshim, wherever that is. Tarsus, somewhere in Syria, I think, in the north there. And how did Mordechai know? He was in the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin. Why did the Sanhedrin have to know? Shiri, 70 languages for davening. We daven. So it's a very interesting halacha. Yeah. When Eidim, it says al pishnaim Eidim, by the word of 2 Eidim, based on after Paskin. So they have to understand what the Eidim are saying. They can cross-examine with an interpreter. That's okay. But the actual Eidus has to be. They have to understand what they're saying. Eidus could come from anywhere in the world, so therefore they have to be ready for it. Now, how many of the Sanhedrin had to know 70 languages? All 70 of them? All 23 Dayanim? So the Gemara says in Yavne, Sanhedrin, when it was in Yavne, there was, I think, 4. 4 of the 70 were experts in all languages. Right? It had to be collectively, it must be maybe at least 3. Could be at least 3, that's the minimum size basin. At least 3 of the Sanhedrin have to understand the language. But Mordechai was one of them. He was one of them. Now, there's a very famous story when Sir Moses Montefiore met the Ger Rebbe, which was he met, it was before the Chiddush Yarim, before the Sfas Emes. Who was Sfas Emes' father? Chiddush Yarim? No, that was after. He was after. I think it was Chiddush Yarim. I think it was one before him. Whichever one it was, before before. So on his travel to Russia to intercede for the Yidden there, he went through Poland, and he was speaking to the Ger Rebbe, and he said to the Ger Rebbe, he said, it's very important that Jews should learn foreign languages. He said, because otherwise, Mordechai would never have overheard the plot. Had they not known the languages. So the Ger Rebbe said to him, no, it's the opposite. You see, from there, Jews don't learn other languages. He said, what do you mean? He said, if Jews would learn other languages, they wouldn't have spoken in front of him. They would have thought, oh, he probably understands the language. But they realised Jews only spoke their Lashon HaKodesh. So it's safe to speak Tarshish. So he said the opposite. You see, Faket, the Yidden didn't speak other languages. So he asked him, so he said to the Ger Rebbe, well then who's going to speak to the kings on behalf of the Yidden? He said, for that we've got some Moses Montefiore. Right? So, okay. So now how did you find out? So that's one opinion. Another pshat is, it was Baruch HaKodesh. Because Baruch revealed to him the plot. Okay. Now, amazing thing. Vayaged le'Esther HaMalka. He gets the message in to Esther about the plot. He did not say to her, tell it to the king in my name. He didn't say that. He just told her about the plot. What does Esther do? V'atoim Esther lamelech b'shem Mordechai. Says the Al Shech HaKodesh. You see here, it's an insight into the nature of great leaders of Klal Yisrael. They are totally selfless. Mordechai wanted Esther to get all the credit for it. And Esther wanted Mordechai to get all the credit for it. Each one, no one was a covered chapper. Yeah, I get the honor, the glory. No, nothing doing like that. He wanted her to have the credit, and he never said to her, say it in my name. But she understood there's something unusual here, and she chat. Mordechai has to get the credit for it, and she gets. So the Gemara learns from here, when you tell over nice about Torah and you say who you heard it from, so you don't get the credit for it, maybe Geula alone can bring Geula to the world. So explains the Maharal. Beautiful. Maharal says, it's not a skula. It's not a skula. I say over a vort. I say, who told me this vort? Chaim Tamji told me this vort. Yeah? I'm going to become the redeemer of Klal Yisrael. No, it doesn't mean that. He said, when you say over Dvar Torah area in somebody else's name, what you're doing, you're giving the cover to the one who deserves the cover. It's his shtickle Torah. It's not yours. So you'll say, you give the cover to the one it belongs to. So when Hashem needs to save Klal Yisrael, He will only do it if people will realize it's from Hashem. So who will He choose? Somebody who gives the credit to the one who really owns the credit. So He will choose you to be a shliach for Klal Yisrael, because you'll make sure Hashem gets the credit. People will acknowledge it's from Hashem. It's not Him.
That's why Moshe wrote the Torah and said Moshe
The most humble man. That's right.
How can he say that? Because you have
That's
to
right.
appreciate that it's from Hashem.
That's right.
And then you're being.
That's right. Exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. And he was the girl Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't take any credit for himself.
From
Where do we know? In the Haggadah. In the Haggadah, Moshe is not mentioned. Yeah. If somebody asks you, Eli, who took us out of Mitzrayim? So what's the answer?
Hashem.
Yeah, it's not Moshe. Moshe is the shliach. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can say that was the same thing. It wasn't them who told me that about Hashem.
Okay, now, next thing. Vayivukash Hadava, they investigated. Vayimotze, they found, now either they found the poison, or they found them with the knives in the boot. Whichever one it was. Vayitolu Shnema ala eitz. Now this was the new law. The king could paskin himself, didn't have to send it to the courts. So Achashverosh said, go and hang them. So he activated the second piece of advice, or second legislation, Haman had brought in. What was the first one? Get rid of Vashti and find somebody as good, which he's done. He's now got Esther. And the second law, that you can pass it yourself, don't go to your courts, he did the same thing here. And that explains now in Perek Gimel, he now elevates Haman. He said, Haman, both of your pieces of legislation were brilliant. And he wanted to thank him for it. But in between, he does something very strange. And Chazal say, this was his mitzvah. He was always grateful for good advice. Now, someone's just saved his life. So what should he have done to Mordechai there and then? Given him 1 million gold coins or something, Give him, I don't know, a bit of property in the northeast of England, Yeah? Give him something, give him a thank you. Unbelievable. 2 things happen. Vayikosei b'sefer divrei hayomim lifnei hamelech. The royal scribe didn't write in front of the king. There was a job. The guy was anything happened to the king, wrote it down. Here, very strangely, the guy came into the king's rooms and wrote it in front of Achashverosh. So he knew in his book of his private diary, there was an entry about what Mordechai did. So years later, when he can't sleep at night, he questioned it. Normally he wouldn't have known what was written there, what wasn't written there, because it was some office. They wrote down the Chronicles of the King, the history books, the historians recorded it. Here, it was done right in front of the king. And strangely, I think, Achashverosh is one of his good midas of rewarding people with a big ashikayach. He does nothing. Because Mordechai needed it 5 years later. That's part of the miracle. So everything irrational goes on. This plot was crazy, doesn't make sense. He told, normally Esther would have said it over in Mordechai, he didn't say it in my name, she says it in his name. They find the evidence, they find either the poison or the knives. Normally these things would be well and truly hidden. They discover it. Everything goes against the grain, says the Malbim. The six things all together. He says, and now the second part of the jigsaw puzzle is complete. Esther's in place. Mordechai's in place with the reward he's not received yet. And now, Haman can come on the scene. Now this is Lamaisa, is an incredible thing. A person should know in his life, a person thinks he needs things now. Or he could do with it now, he thinks. But if you really need it now, because God would be giving it you now, so why is he not giving it you now if you need it, if you want it? I mean, everyone's got wants. You want what you want, you're not going to necessarily get that. The answer is, because Baruch knows there's going to be a time later on in your life, but that's when you really need it. And he holds it back. If Mordechai would have got his reward now, history would be very different. So Kosh Baruch Hu withheld it because he didn't need it now. In the grand scheme of things, he needed it later. So it's a mafteh. The problem with human beings are we want everything now, or worse, we want it yesterday. There's a famous joke about travel agents. They have a sign of it when they don't have travel agents anymore. It's all online. It was, if I'd have wanted it yesterday, I would have asked for it yesterday. I want it now. That's why I'm asking you now. Yeah? Or if I want it tomorrow, I'll ask you tomorrow. Yeah? That's the way human beings work. There's a thing now. But Shlomo Melech says an amazing thing. It took me years and years till I had what was going on, till I found it in a sefer. He says, like Kol Zman V'Eis, everything's got a time. Only we want it now. Because Baruch has got a time for it. There's a time when Klal Yisrael went down to Mitzrayim. A time when Klal Yisrael came out of Mitzrayim. There's a time we're going to Golus. A time when Mashiach will come. All the things, there's a time. So sometimes it's not the answer is no when you daven. The answer is not no. Because Baruch say not yet. Because now it's not good for you now. You need it more in the future. And you found with Yaakov Avinu at the end of his life, he looked back and he said, yeah, and he had a rough ride because also he had a was a real bumpy ride, so to speak. He said, Holakim, Horoya Oisi, Hashem has led me like a shepherd, Me'oidi, from the day I was born, Adi Yom Hazeh, 147 years later. When he looked back on his life, then he could reflect about it. I didn't understand it then, but now I understand it. Now it's Hashem took me this way, he takes the sheep into this field, then a day later, he takes the sheep out of the field, go to that field, next day by the river, wherever. So the poor sheep he follows. But the shepherd knows he's looking after his flock. He's looking after his flock. So Yaakov Avinu at the end of his life said it's exactly the thing. B'shas ma'asim we don't understand. We don't. Otherwise it's not a test. If we knew the reason for everything, Hashem can't test a person. Right? But with Emunah Pshuta, to understand that Kosh Baruch Hu is leading me, he's guiding me, and when I really need his help, that's when Kosh Baruch Hu says, Yeshua, that's what we say, Teshuvas Hashem, Keherafayim. Right? It mamish comes from nowhere when you need it. There's a Zman, and now everything's in place. Mordechai's in place. Esther's in place. So now the Zman of the Gezerah, now we can carry on. Be'ez Hashem tomorrow we'll do Haman's Gezerah. Just to finish off with Avos Chesed, he talks about Achnos Zorchim. He says, Lemaisa, he said you have to study Parshas Vayera to learn from Avraham Avinu. He said, now we can't copy it completely. He said, but one thing, he points out an amazing thing. He offered them, he begged them to come in. So he said, now you can't run around the streets begging people to come in. He said, but when an opportunity comes to be machnis and oirach, so you should try your very best to try and offer hospitality. He said, and he made it very clear that they weren't putting him out, because that puts people off. Sometimes they feel bad. So he made out, just come have a drink, you know, like a biscuit, you know. Made it small, but then when it came to it, he brought a whole meal. So he said, if you noticed, the first thing he did was like wash your feet and chill a bit. Now the guy might be hungry, he might not be hungry, but if he's been travelling, the first thing you need to do when you travel is rest a bit. So he understood that, but then he said an amazing thing. Avravinu's Gaddas in Chesed was, he understood they didn't want to stay there a long time. So he said that to them. He said, just pop in for a bit to eat. He said, and then carry on your journey. Right? It was all geared round whatever little bit of chesed he could do. He didn't miss the opportunity. So if you can give a full meal and you know, they stay overnight and everything, very good. But it's wrong to push the guest to stay longer than he would like to. Then it defeats the purpose of the chesed. Yeah, the chesed is to help him, not to put him in a difficult situation.
You know when people keep you and you like want to get the hell out of there. It's the worst feeling.
Yeah.
Ever.
Someone said it to me
Don't
today.
be rude to them because
He said the balabas is dozing off 1 o'clock Shabbos morning and you're still drinking his best whiskey. Right? You know, he said there comes a time you have to know when to go. Yeah? He said there was William's uncle Shlomo told me there was a guy in Stamford Hill who had a sign in his door. Baruch atah b'vayecha, Baruch Hashem b'tzeisecha.
what's that mean?
Well, you're welcome to come in and Baruch Hashem when you go. Right? Because sometimes people do overstay the stay. But part of the Gaddas of Ravinu, he told them, and I can see you can't stay long, so just quickly, grab a bite to eat and then be on your way. That's also part of the chesed, not to put them out, not to make them feel awkward when they come. Okay, Be'ez Hashem will carry on.
Rabbi, Schwalbe.
Steuer. Steuer. Steuer.